when Mordechai Gur, the Israeli general, said on the radio, the Temple Mount is in our hands, it electrified Jewish communities all over the planet.
This week on Christian World News, in June of 1967, Jewish forces unified Jerusalem, inspiring Jews all over the world to return to their biblical homeland.
Now, 50 years later, we examine the prophecy and the promise of the restoration of Jerusalem.
Hello and welcome to this very special edition of Christian World News. I'm George Thomas.
Yes, you are. And I'm Wendy Griffith. Thanks for being with us. 50 years ago this week, 5 Arab nations launched a massive attack against the nation of Israel. By the end of the Six-Day War, Israel had recaptured Jerusalem and the biblical heartland of Judea and Samaria.
It is a miraculous story that invokes biblical prophecy and divine intervention, as behind the scenes, 2 superpowers came to the brink of Armageddon. Chris Mitchell has a story.
June 5th, 1967, Prime Minister Levi Eshkol sent a cable to President Lyndon Johnson informing war had begun. He wrote, Israel's existence and integrity have been endangered. He added a request, prevent the Soviet Union from exploiting and enlarging the conflict at Israel's greatest hour of danger.
What most people don't realize is that the actor that was perhaps the most dangerous, but operating sort of behind the scenes, was the Soviet Union.
Middle East expert Joel Rosenberg says, while Israel faced the combined might of Arab countries, it was the Soviet Union casting a giant shadow over the war.
Now, June 5th, 1967, the morning that Eshkol orders Israeli bombers into action, and they're successful, Soviet Premier Kosygin dials the hotline right into the White House and demands to talk to President Johnson. Now, the hotline was rarely used except in the most extreme crises. And the message that Kosygin sent heavily implied that if the United States didn't force Israel to back down, that the Soviets were going to take direct military action. And this took the conflict to an entirely different level.
President Johnson had told Eshkol the U.S. might cut off political and military assistance to Israel in case of a preemptive strike.
So the Israeli leadership was already taking a huge risk that Johnson would keep his word. Once the Soviets got involved, a dynamic changed. Suddenly, the Johnson White House saw the conflict not simply in terms of Israeli, Egyptian, Israeli, Syrian terms, but in U.S.-Soviet terms.
That led Johnson to send the Sixth Fleet steaming towards Israel as a show of support.
Would you say the fact that the Soviets never did get into the war part of the miracle of the Six-Day War?
I think it's one of the untold stories, or rarely told stories, of God's protection of Israel is the fact that the Soviets seemed to come so close, that they were threatening to the Americans, to the Israelis directly. They were promising their Arab allies that they were going to do more, and then they were actually moving military forces closer and closer to Israel.
Rosenberg also sees the war as a prophetic milestone.
The Bible does say that Jerusalem will come back under Jewish control, and it happened in June of 1967. The Bible says that Judea and Samaria, what the world calls the West Bank, will be in Jewish hands. It's part of the biblical heartland. And God says he will restore the land, and he'll restore the people to the land. And I think that you also see God giving this land back to the Jewish people. Not because we deserve it, but because God had promised it.
The Six-Day War became a turning point for Jewish immigration to the land of Israel.
Throughout the Old Testament, God says that he's going to draw the Jewish people back to the land. But what's interesting is that at that moment, when Mordechai Gur, the Israeli general, said on the radio, the Temple Mount is in our hands. When that was broadcast, not just through Israel, but worldwide. It electrified Jewish communities all over the planet. The level of Aliyah, Jews leaving their exile countries and coming back to the land of their forefathers, skyrocketed in the years ahead.
Although Israel survived one of its darkest moments, Rosenberg says it still faces threats from the north, backed by a familiar interloper.
I see that the Russians are very actively moving into this region. They have made Iran their primary ally, and now they're working hand in glove with Iran to prop up Bashar al-Assad, who has slaughtered some 500,000 people in Syria. So you now have Russian forces, Iranian forces, helping Syrian forces just a few miles north of Israel.
50 years since the battle for Jerusalem, Rosenberg says Israel and its capital remain on the front lines.
Jerusalem was reunited 50 years ago, but the battle for Jerusalem remains. It's a political battle. It's an economic battle. There are people trying to isolate Israel politically around the world. Jerusalem is the flashpoint. Jerusalem is the epicenter. For 4,000 years, people have wanted this city, and they have fought hard to get it. And so the fact that Israel controls it today is biblical, it's prophetic, but it's also complicated. And we need to be praying for the peace of Jerusalem and praying for Israel to be secure.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks, Chris. Great piece. CBN has produced a docudrama about the retaking of Jerusalem. It's called In Our Hands. It will be in select theaters on Tuesday, June the 6th. Check out cbnnews.com to find locations and times in your area.
Coming up, witness prophecy unfolding in the West Bank and see why the laughter of these children signals a pivotal point in history.
Folks, there's a power beyond the realm of human intellect.
In Pat Robertson's new DVD, Miracles, learn how you can experience God's power in your life.
You've said that there are 3 components to seeing miracles. What do you mean by that?
A power that can overcome any problem.
This is the normal inheritance of the children of God.
And see inspirational true stories of miracles.
Meet the real people who have come face to face with that power.
Medicine cannot explain this.
I felt the strength of God come.
I am being healed.
Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your copy of Miracles. Experience God's power in your life.
I felt God saying, I am in complete control.
This was a dead man. Now he's alive.
It's definitely a miracle.
Miracles. Experience God's power in your life.
Available now.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
And welcome back to the broadcast. Since 1967, the world has called on Israel to turn over the land it won in the Six-Day War in exchange for peace.
But that's unacceptable for those who believe God gave that land to the Jewish people as part of their divine inheritance.
Much of the world calls the playgrounds these children enjoy an obstacle to peace. That's because they're in Judea and Samaria, otherwise known as the West Bank.
Are we witnessing prophecy unfolding right now after the 1967 war?
Absolutely. It says that the sounds of children playing in the streets will be heard once again. So you hear it, you see it.
I spoke with former Shiloh Mayor David Rubin in Shiloh, overlooking the road of the patriarchs, the highway Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob would have traveled on. Rubin told me the Six-Day War was pivotal in Israel's history. It opened the door for Jewish people to redeem the biblical heartland after 2,000 years in exile. Places like Jerusalem, home of 2 consecutive Jewish temples. Bethlehem, the birthplace of Jesus. Hebron, where Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and their wives are buried. And Shiloh, where the tabernacle stood for 369 years. They all came back into Israeli hands.
So you see 67, the Six-Day War, just like a pivot, a prophetic pivot in time and history?
Oh, clearly, clearly. It says in the book of Ezekiel, the dry bones being put back together again. Israel was being put back together again as a nation. If we don't have a right to Shiloh, and we don't have a right to Shechem, and we don't have a right to Bethel and Jericho, we definitely don't have a right to Tel Aviv.
But not everyone saw the opportunity. It took until 1978 for Shiloh to be established, just above the site where the tabernacle had rested.
There were Israelis who were coming here trying to set up tents on the lower hills of Shiloh, and the Israeli prime minister, who was looking over his shoulder at the American president, kept sending in the army to chase them away.
Just months after the Six-Day War, Israelis established the first Jewish community in Judea, about 35 miles south of Shiloh at Kfar Etzion. Jews lived there before Israel's independence war in 1948 and were either evacuated or massacred by the Jordanians.
When this group of orphans of those who were murdered notified the Israeli government that if you don't give us the permit, we will go on without a permit. The government really couldn't stand up against orphans of those who were murdered. And so Kfar Etzion was established.
Rabbi Eliezer Waldman was one of those who helped establish the next community in ancient Hebron.
There was always a Jewish community in Hebron, even during the 2,000 years of exile, until 1929, when the Arabs massacred the Jewish community here.
A small group of families rented a hotel in Hebron for the Passover Seder. Essentially, they never left.
And I believe then almost the entire population of Israel was with us. Even more than a half a year after the Six-Day War, the spirits were high among almost the entire population.
Thousands of Israeli pilgrims enter the old city of Jerusalem for solemn religious ceremonies.
All of the media was with us. Yeah, I even remember headlines, passages of the prophets hovering in the air.
After 50 years, some 430,000 Israelis live in more than 200 communities in Judea and Samaria. The number jumps to 750,000 if Eastern Jerusalem neighborhoods are included.
The growth here has been so tremendous, and as we've gotten through those 50 years after the Six-Day War and we're looking to the future, so we have this vision of a booming Shiloh once again.
50 years ago, what would this place have looked like?
Barren desert. There was nothing. It was just hills of weeds and thorns.
This road will lead to a new school for the growing population. There are 8,000 residents in the Shiloh Township. More than 2,000 of them are children who study here in Shiloh.
We learned that when Israel is not in the land, that the land lays barren. The land doesn't give its fruit. And now the land of Israel is giving of its fruit because Israel is back. And the most important fruit is what you see right here, all these children here.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Shiloh in Samaria.
Up next, why some believe retaking the Temple Mount was only the first step in an important biblical prophecy.
Pat Robertson's new DVD, Miracles.
I knew it was God.
Meet real people who have experienced God's life-saving power.
God was taking care of us.
You'll discover the 3 components of miracles, the power of your words, and the abundant kindness and mercy God has for you.
Remember to keep on asking, keep on seeking, and you will receive.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. 8 years ago, my husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
When you give, smiles grow bigger. When you care, homes are happier. When you comfort, the hurt goes away. When we all come together to love, miracles happen.
Welcome back. It's a key element of biblical prophecy involving the return of Jesus Christ to the earth.
We're talking about building a 3rd temple in Jerusalem. Now there's a movement in Israel to make it happen. And it all started when the Israelis retook the Temple Mount back in 1967.
On June 7, 1967, Israeli Brigade Commander Mothe Gur made an announcement that Jews had waited to hear for some 2,000 years. Retaking this ground was important for a number of reasons. For one, it's where King Solomon built the first Jewish temple. After the Babylonians destroyed it, Zerubbabel laid the foundation stone for a second temple that was later expanded by King Herod. It fell at the hands of the Romans in 70 AD. When Commander Gur declared that the Temple Mount was back in Jewish hands, it rekindled hope for a long-awaited 3rd temple.
The Six-Day War was a miracle of biblical proportions and was a cataclysmic opening of a new era for Israel and for the whole world.
Rabbi Chaim Richman of the Temple Institute is dedicated to rebuilding the Jewish temple. He sees the time since the Six-Day War as a prophetic shift.
It would be hard, I think, not to see what's happened in the past 50 years as a tremendous jumpstart, a tremendous fast forward. It's more than prophetic. It's like a kiss from heaven, you know, it's like a divine kiss. It's an intimate brush with the reality of God's compassion and love, and he keeps his promises.
The Institute shares a key connection to the battle for Jerusalem. Its founder, Rabbi Yisrael Ariel, served with the 55th Paratrooper Brigade that captured the Temple Mount. After the victory, a Jordanian guide gave them a remarkable tour.
His job was to carry the company machine gun. There's a very beautiful photograph of that. He actually, the first night of the liberation of Jerusalem, he was given the task of guarding over the spot of the Dome of the Rock, which of course we believe is the Holy of Holies. The story, though, that he told us is that the soldiers were on the Temple Mount, and it was just like the first hour or so. And they were approached by a Jordanian fellow in Western dress who explained that he was the official tour guide for the Jordanian parliament, and he offered to take the soldiers and show them the sights on the Temple Mount. And he takes the soldiers, you know, the rabbi there, and he says, well, this is exactly where the sanctuary stood. This is where the altar stood, and then this is where the menorah stood. It tells him all these things about the history of the Holy Temple. Finally, the rabbi asked him, why are you telling us all this? And he said, well, we have a tradition from our fathers, they from their fathers, that one day the Jews would wage a war and conquer this mountain and rebuild the Holy Temple. And I assume that you're starting tomorrow. And I want this to be my part in helping you.
What was their reaction to that story?
Well, gosh, I guess yes, they were pretty surprised, but the bottom line is, in hindsight, it doesn't look like we were ready.
50 years later, that's changed, with the Temple Institute preparing blueprints and gathering official temple elements, such as the priestly garments. Richmond is also dispelling myths about the temple on today's digital loudspeaker, YouTube.
Let's start at the beginning. What was the Holy Temple really all about?
All of this means talk of rebuilding the temple is no longer considered a fringe idea.
Today, there is a lobby in the Knesset of how many members of Knesset that are constantly speaking about Jewish rights to pray on the Temple Mount. There are members of Knesset that actually talk about the rebuilding of the Holy Temple. Do you understand that 20 years ago, these people wouldn't have been given a moment on prime time television in Israel to say these things? They would have been laughed out.
So a few years ago, this was considered fringe?
Zealots, lunatics, peculiar. Today it's mainstream.
One of those members is Yehuda Glick.
10 years ago, there was not a single member of Knesset who ascended Temple Mount. Today, we have 20 of the Knesset members who are interested in ascending Temple Mount, praying on the Temple Mount, and are part in the battle for the redemption of the Temple Mount and for bringing the Temple Mount back into the center of the next step in the redemption process.
Richmond sees the temple through the eyes of the prophet Isaiah, who wrote 3,000 years ago that God's house would be a house of prayer for all nations.
It means basically that there's a God in the world and that the best is yet to come, and that we are so connected to Him and to each other and to that purpose and to all humanity. And it's just a wonderful privilege to be here with you today, to be looking out over Jerusalem and to realize that we're living in probably the most important time in history. If you believe in the God of Israel and you see His hand on His people and you understand the tremendous changes that have gone on over the years, you see that the one who brought us this far isn't finished and will keep His promises.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, the Temple Mount, Jerusalem.
When we come back, how recapturing the Temple Mount opened a whole new door to ancient history.
Kids, we want them to grow up knowing God's Word. But in today's busy world, sometimes we could use some help. The free Superbook Kids Bible app has fun stuff your kids will love. They'll have a blast learning the Bible, playing great games, watching cool videos,
Follow me!
discovering heroes in the Bible. They'll have fun while they learn God's Word. The Superbook Kids Bible app, available on iTunes and the Google Play Store.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. 8 years ago, my husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes and Google Play now.
In the past 50 years, archaeologists have uncovered some of history's most significant finds in and around Jerusalem.
Yes, they have. Those discoveries became possible when Israeli troops captured East Jerusalem in June of 1967.
From 1948 to 1967, Jerusalem was a city divided by landmines, barricades, and barbed wire. Suddenly, after the Six-Day War and years of neglect, the doors of Jerusalem were opened to archaeologists who longed to uncover its ancient past. The first dig took place here at the southwestern wall of the Temple Mount by Elat Mazar's grandfather, Benjamin.
My grandfather excavated 10 continuous years without stopping. This was a fantastic project, almost no parallel in dimensions. Hundreds of people worked. They revealed fantastic remains of ancient Jerusalem from all periods.
It caused a boom of archaeology. There were suddenly budgets for archaeology. There was a public interest in archaeology of Jerusalem. People come and visit the archaeological sites of Jerusalem.
Since 1967, Mazar and Barkai have made some of Israel's greatest finds.
We showed in the reveal King David's palace. We showed now more of the King Solomon's constructions, city, just as the Bible describes. He built a city wall around the temple, around his own palace.
We discovered the earliest biblical manuscripts ever discovered, predating the Dead Sea Scrolls by many centuries. These are two tiny scrolls of silver. We have the priestly benediction. The Lord bless you and keep you in both of them.
So did many of these discoveries after the Six-Day War, did they confirm the biblical record of Jerusalem?
In general, the answer is yes. The history which emerged from the results of the excavations fits well the historical data embedded in the Old Testament.
Perhaps Mazar's greatest find brought the Bible to life.
From the biblical times, finding the seal impression from King Hezekiah himself, this is unparalleled, unheard of, to come as close as you can imagine to a biblical figure, not to mention such a king as King Hezekiah. So to find his seal impression, it's almost touching him.
Is there any connection between what you've discovered and the time when Jesus was here in Jerusalem?
Yes, for sure. In the book of Acts and in the Gospel of John, there is a mentioning of the eastern porch of the Temple Mount, which was pre-Herodian. It appears under the name of the Porch of Solomon. We have the floors upon which the coins were rolling when Jesus turned upside down the temples of the money changers.
The biblical stories and the New Testament story, by the way, it goes together because they just prove quite accurately the development of Jerusalem and the way Jerusalem is described is quite accurate.
Today, 50 years after the war, Jerusalem is an open city. Visitors can come to see the excavations below the city of David, at the pool of Siloam, where Jesus healed the blind man, or the massive dig near the walls of the old city.
I come in the morning and go to sleep with Jerusalem. I mean, excavating Jerusalem, it's 100% on my mind. Besides my family, I mean, you know, we are very family people.
There is no other place on earth which could compete with Jerusalem.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
All right, folks, thanks so much for joining us this week.
What a show. Well, until next week, from all of us here at Christian World News, goodbye and God bless you.